don't think that the first thing I looked up, I don't think that Rockefeller Center and Grand Central is very much different if you take the initial situations that they occurred at from the apparently slightly looser ad hocery in the Washington Bridge bus station and the other thing. And you can go further, for instance, an example, nothing to do with megastructures, but the same sort of spread.
There's one left, isn't there?
You know, from the underground robots to total, you know, Fred and Bert, to total fragmentation of the illuminated wall. So the coming back to the quote, I don't know, I'm sure it wasn't Bob Maxwell's, but it came in your thing about megastructures, how to do cities. It may be that all the things, I don't think there's very much difference between the Trouvé ones you mentioned tonight, the London Bridge and the rest. If in fact one defines what the situations were at the time. What is interesting, and I would like, it is a question.
Right.
Can you do the Wilcox quote again? Lecture 3.
Then start lecture 3. I've got it here in the original Xerox. So hang on. It's just to prove I've got my notes with me. Wilcox.
Radical, because you use it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still in many ways the best short definition, if one disagrees with it marginally, you know. Right, the Wilcoxon quote from the top. Whereas the root meaning of the word carries the idea only of great size, certain other characteristics have been frequently associated with the word from the time of its inception. A megastructure is thus not only a structure of great size, but is also a structure which is frequently, 1, constructed of modular units, 2, capable of great or even unlimited, quote-unquote, expansion, 3, a structural framework into which smaller structural units, for example, rooms, houses, or small buildings of other sorts, can be built or even plugged in, quote-unquote, or clipped on, quote-unquote, after having been prefabricated elsewhere. 4, a structural framework expected to have a useful life much longer than that of the smaller structural units which it might support.
Great. And then if you take that awful building, the architect who unfortunately I've forgotten, but as you said, the links you could even crawl through the service ducts. And then you take the Isle of Capri thing, where they took a stare around the structural thing. One thing that definition doesn't get in, which it always delights people, or at least makes their juices go in order to sort of say that might be a megastructure, is this mixture, is this twisting the system. You know, it's not just diagonal links, it's something that you can see one network, or take the Wilcox, which may be more permanent than the other. You can see the input, and then there's the capacity for sort of twisting the system over and above that, of messing around with it. And that seems to be something which I don't necessarily say that that's an additional definition of megastructure, but it seems to make the most juicy situations where people say, well, now that might be a megastructure. Because when people think of Grand Central, in fact, you drew Grand Central, even with the Pan Am block and everything now, and drew the sections, it would look very boring in your eyes and my eyes, and we wouldn't say, well, that's really a megastructure, it's a pile-up. So, if in fact you put in height and use, and someone actually drew the roofs, but drew them as roofs, because the system appeared to be being played with, and say, perhaps even though it's a vertical rather than something long, horizontal, large, and stretched out, it might be.
Can I answer your non-question in 2 parts? The first non-part. It is true, I think, that no megastructure is built on what you might call ordinary ground on which ordinary rain is played. It is very interesting. There's always a trick there somewhere, and the nearest, either they're not built on ground which is covered by normal commercial procedures, nor by normal municipal procedures. The nearest thing to one standing on normal commercial procedures at the beginning of its life was Brunswick Square. But in fact, the company couldn't, much on profits, couldn't sustain cash flow, and were finally reduced to flogging off the top half of it to Camden. Interesting piece of co-ownership or whatever. Of all the other cases built, they're nearly all built somehow outside normal financing procedures. They're built on air rights, built roads, or plus Bonaventure railway. They're built for exhibitions outside the normal restraints of financing, like Habitat. They're built in enclaves within enclaves, totally protected against financial reality, like, say, Cumbernauld Town Centre, which is built. Cumbernauld Town Centre does not even stand upon normal, whatever that may mean, British New Town financing. There was, in fact, a separate site, isolated from the rest of the New Town operation, which actually carried the financial structure for Cumbernauld New Town. So on that point, you're right. And probably what brings accidental and deliberate megastructures together is that I think they nearly always turn up in sort of freak landownership situations. Very, very difficult to think of anyone, proceeding from a normal municipal or exploited financial background who could in fact erect a megastructure within their normal terms of operating practice. Even say Sheffield Park Hill was a project that hung fire until the slum clearance subsidies were changed. And it suddenly became possible or profitable to go ahead and do it. But as at the time it was designed, in fact, or half designed, the actual available financing wasn't supported. It was a change in the slum clearance financing which made the building up impossible.
Yes, it could be legislation or a river.
Or something like that. It always seems to need something like that to make it happen. It's interesting that, in fact, I suppose what it is at real city centre places, as they stand, no one would even begin to think about doing anything like that sort of size nowadays. And the undertaking just couldn't be conceived. I mean, they say even the market.
It wouldn't be justified because you can do it, you can play it straight.
Well, it wouldn't be justified.
Play it straight on the terms you find.
And whoever will want to begin it. You have to have a situation where you have a municipality gripped by uncontrollable ambition, like the City of London, to make something like the Barbican possible.
But it's quite interesting.
Probable.
The highest building in this country, the National Westminster Tower, that's going up, does not have to conform with the City of London walkway thing.
Right.
They waived it on that case.
It's gone out of the system. On the other point about twisting the system, I think that's a very English view of the situation. I think particularly sort of American academics, megastructurists, stand much more foursquare on a small system than a big system, and not particularly with messing it about. You said not just a question of diagonal sectors. Nevertheless, I think those are one of the signals that this particular aspect of megastructures, which appears to intrigue the English, will not happen. Because last week, John Ray said to me, he said, what about diagonal circulation? The diagonal discussed, They immediately came up with something which he associated with megas. And certainly one of the things that makes, say, Santa Monica appear like a megastructure is the ramp coming down to it, and the 2 or 3 little staircases will come down elsewhere, introducing that diagonal element. You may be right about why that has this peculiar image importance, that it does suggest that the system can be bashed around. I don't know. But certainly there is something there. No, I think you're on to a sure point there, Bryce, somewhere, I think.
But I would like to put a word, I agree with Mel Charney. I don't think people are quite as green as Denny Scott Brown thought to go Gaga as a catalytic cracker, in the tubes. I think Charney was right, but in fact it's the process that we're excited about.
No, I can't see why the imagery should have that particular power unless it demonstrated a flow process or one of those other non-closed, open-ended things that one was interested in at the time. The idea that stuff entered the system at one end and passed up to the top and came down and finally went into ships, and the ships were across the Atlantic. Very much, I was always interested, I think, when there was a real megastructure, and as you were saying, the actual route could be followed through. What you were doing and why you were doing it at various points going through the thing.
Perhaps she and her friends had over-tinted retinas.
It's a thought. I'd also like to know who else was in the car. Anybody present in the room in the car at the time? It must have been 66 or 67 the lady was in Long Beach.
Warren. Yeah,
Right.
that's a shimmering
Right.
sand. They're not for that.
Yeah.
Peter, can I pick up a point
Yeah.
on that? I mean, I think this evening's thing about the megastructure somehow being a gesture that connects town planning to architecture.
Yeah.
And then this subsequent conversation about the symbolism of the diagonal thing, and that came up in the first chapter, if I remember somewhere. I think, to me, a sort of interpretive point at the emotional level again was that the whole megastructure thing, as I said, I think in comment on your first chapter, that what's important to us doing megastructure studies was that not the structure bit, but that it was a sort of way of exploding the old grip that town planning had, architecture had, normal systems of connectivity, which tend to be sort of orthogonal, had, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And in a way, if one sort of blurs the edges in retrospect, like I think the whole, I sort of try and remember that the whole thing about it, the whole sort of kick of it was that almost any pre-definition, once you assume the megastructure, once you assume this trajectory, this sort of bulking, the whole architecture thing, the whole hierarchy of architecture thing, that in a normal city, in a normal building, there was an assumption of a hierarchy. It might be this kind of hierarchy or that, but once you'd assumed it, whether it was a kind of classical or any of the rest, once you'd assumed the mode, then you were perforce expected to stick to it, and hierarchically expected to stick to it. Once you had assumed a certain integration with a type of city structure or a type of means of connection, going up or going across or going on the diagonal, there was this whole grip around the throat, and the whole history of architecture said, okay mate, you're on diagonals, you stick with it.
Right.
Now the great thing of drawing a megastructure, not only do you say, doesn't matter if that bit of it goes, something else will come along, whether I've done something else. Doesn't that, we've got diagonal connection. But just fingers, just when you've got used to the idea of all the structure carrying the diagonal connection, we'll have some of it that just goes straight along and at right angles. And then just when you say, that's all right, we'll have one that sort of creeps up, sort of, I think it's climbing, but it might not be. I mean, there was a certain cussedness. I mean, I can remember the thing going through one's head. There was this cussedness saying, all right, now they expect everything to be throwaway and all to do with move. So we have one bit of it that sticks there. It was the feeling that, and this is why, in a funny way, in retrospect, it's the mega structural aspect of it. That almost seemed like another a locket around its throat. I mean, I think the essential thing about the disintegration of the megastructure was that it didn't happen at a moment. It gradually one used bits of it, and then this, it started a train of thought, which was by its nature to do with discarding the rules as you made them.
Yeah.
And I can remember one stage when we were very turned on by Mike Weber started, we were very turned on to the electric car. And the whole thing about weaving the electric car system in amongst the bits that you plugged in and took away, or then you clipped on, was that it began to, by its very, its very free-form possibility, that it's a piece of furniture which could be controlled, it could go linearly, but it needn't, was that it in fact was could be said to be one of the things that broke the actual megastructure part. It didn't matter because it itself was consistent with this inconsistency. That once the megastructure had generated its child, which you could say was the electric car, then the child killed the father.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter, it just has gone on. I mean, in my mind, it's sort of gone on and on like that. Now, when sort of the guy who's now I've forgotten his bloody name, Johansson, does that thing many years later, it's sort of it's a marvelous example of missing the point. I mean, it would have been nice if you could say there is a 4x4 duct going up it, But it was sort of pretty obvious from the first moment you see it that he's missed the point. He's frozen the diagram of 1964, made it useful for his art gallery or something.
It's a theatre, yeah.
It's the same thing. And, you know, it's so obvious that the nature of the thing, it could never freeze like that.
That Momus theatre thing is interesting, but it always seems to me to be a statue of a megastructure. And it's not a live megastructure as I would see it. And yet it's one of the prized examples in Jim Burns' arthropods book of buildings that can change shape and spin. I'm glad you said it, but I didn't.
He misses the point as much as I remember.
Is he the same Burns as James T. Burns?
Yeah.
He is.
He is.
So he became Jim when he went alternative culture.
Correct.
Yeah, I see. Megapod. Yeah, you know, because it seems, I mean, there is a building which clearly nothing can be changed. This is kind of frozen image, and the structural and connection relationships. I see the press is leaving to report the word Jim Burns is an idiot. Good night. You know, it's a fixed image, you know, which there's no adaptability, quite clear. It's a kind of memorial to the megastructure, that particular phase of the megastructure movement. But I think the line that you and Cedric are both taking is extremely English in this connection. You know, that visibly this situation in which, so to speak, the megastructure becomes simply a complicated raceway for the electric car. Or, say, Cedric's think belt, we really can't tell what structure and what interchangeable combination, and the whole thing is designed to rust away in 5 years or whatever it was. Anyhow, I mean, that's a peculiar English development, which really nowhere else in the world happened quite like that. Anywhere else, I mean, from Berkeley to Rosario in Argentina, there's a great sort of solidity about the structure. It becomes the dominant element in all those things.
Can I just make a point?
Yeah.
I mean, as far as what students are concerned, there was a period, say around 68, and it stretched inside, where you could think of several student projects that are in fact miniature bits of megastructure, that the contention that a megastructure is of a certain complexity or size. I mean, what was exciting in that, the 68-ish period, is that several students got on to refinements of bits of free thinking, if you like, sort of all about architecture, which, had there ever been a megastructure, could have sustained it. And I think this is, again, I'm trying to amplify this point about the megastructure really being an attitude of mind for disintegration, and that's gone on. It went on much later than the actual thing that looked like a thing.
But if you look at, say, the East Coast American megastructure projects, like the Great Schools projects that whatever that was called, you know, Jet Copcup and Kirby in the States, or the New City projects for Harvard, you know, there's no changeability in those things, as you can see. I mean, maybe if anyone bothered to detail, things would be changeable. They are very big, very substantial forms, dominating central city area, meant to dominate. It's quite clear from some of the supporting literature that this fact of domination is extremely important. I mean, they weren't intended to rust and fall away in 5 years or anything like that. They were to raise city planning to a level of monumentality comparable to that which, I suppose, American architecture, commercial architecture had reached in the late Mesa period.
That's an interesting point as well. In America, that was at that point where they invented this discipline called urban design.
Yeah.
It coincides, doesn't it, with that?
No, I think urban design, of course, as you and I suffer from it in the person of Henry Liu, you know, I mean, was in a sense an operation excuse for megastructure, or vice versa. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, well, I think
which was which. But I think right across the field in the States, in all the forward-looking schools, I mean, Rensselaer, Princeton, wherever you were at that particular time, the concept of urban design really meant very, very big buildings, very big multifunctional buildings.
Well, it's planning at an architectural level.
I think that's what I was saying.
Well, which is why it becomes such a solid,
Such a
solidified.
thing. But I mean, also, flattering to mention Henry Louis twice. But the point about, I don't think that the megastructure, as found useful, never mind as how defined, has got anything to do with shortage of space. But I'm sure that North American exemplars do.
Oh, the New York argument.
Absolutely. It's shortage of space.
About the lack of ground space.
It's architectonic, large-scale planning. I do think megastructures have a lot to do with conserving energy, which has a lot to do, and might well, follow on to dispersal, where you can't get it all on one sheet.
Yeah.
But you're still actually doing a megastructure because you're conserving energy in the routing that goes. And going back to the sort of microwave car, it killed its own parent because in fact it was going back on a convenience situation, which was concerned with shortage of space. And the shortage of space attitude also tends somehow, particularly in North American way and Japanese, to be related to, once you've got it right on that little amount of space and you've got it all in, then you can afford the permanence. Now, it happens to be the wrong equation.
I think that's New York rather than Tokyo, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, the New York thing I think
East Coast.
Yeah. Well, there is specifically a New York thing here, but after all, the home of American mega journalism or whatever, is the Time Life building on the Avenue of the Americas, no doubt about that. It represents a view of New York's problems, particularly as entertained by two generations of editors of the Forum, old Doug Haskell, who really first made the pitch for Grand Central. He didn't have the word megastructure, it was quite clear what he's after, Doug Haskell in the first instance, and then Peter Blake, whatever he is, 20 years younger than Doug Haskell, both of whom obsessed with the alleged shortage of ground space for building on Manhattan Island. As I say, if you get as far north as the George Washington Bridge, if you look north, you see nothing but trees. There's a Tryon Park, and the actual size of development dropped from an average of 8 stories to an average of about 1 3/4 stories for the rest of the island. It's quite spectacular. But the image of New York is, of course, the image of, the Wall Street area, the middle section of Fifth and Park, and so forth. And there's this terrible sense of an appalling shortage of space, which to Doug Haskell recommended the multifunctional solution like Grand Central, and to Peter Blake recommended the idea of building in air raids.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how the argument about, or the conversation about George Washington Bridge and the protocol that really comes in on two completely separate attacks as far as Peter Blake is concerned. I don't think he really saw that he'd done it himself until other people started asking about the thing as a whole. Two separate conversations. One about Neri, how marvellous it is to have an area in New York. What a bloody awful job of detailing the Port Authority's architects have made. And the other one is about the wisdom of building in air raids, because she has a terribly short space. And then you've got to look at the thing, and the whole thing then runs together in a comprehensible, but a very complicated design. But certainly, as of the score in '64, when everything was finished, was two things: the city as a single building, which was already very much on people's mind, and the necessity to build in whatever air rights you could find, because there was nowhere else left to build. Whereas in fact, as of then, whether it's true now, it probably is still true now, the average height of buildings on Manhattan Island, average height of building on Manhattan Island as a whole was 1 story less than the average height of buildings in the comparable area of the inner boroughs of London.
Right.
Yeah,
It still is.
it probably still is, but London's gone up so much more, right? Probably, on the average, London probably gone up more than Manhattan has in the same period.
But
Well, what I would also say is that the argument from shortage of space does not seem to apply to anybody in Europe. Whatever motivated European
megastructures, they were concerned about shortage of energy. They were concerned about, value energy. There wasn't an actual space equation on I forget which city it was, but one where also you had the river and the Holler thing for the big town. But there was a very acute equation there on exchange of energy and usefulness, which one can do a slightly comparable thing on the development of the cruise liner. No one's actually said in the North Atlantic or Mediterranean is getting full of ships, but they have started piling up the decks.
Yeah. It's interesting, so speaking of ships, how ships swim quietly in and out of the megastructure argument. It struck me as I was walking down here tonight. Solari, needless to say, has some useful things to say about ships. He says the one thing which differentiates a ship from an arcology is the ship's defining boundary. But he doesn't really like the community who happen to inhabit a ship. Nevertheless, he takes it as a working comparison. It's young Peter Blake again, saying, Hotline's aircraft carrier, another ship, another open megastructure image, which has got to be back to somewhere else. Hotline's aircraft carrier has come true, because they just grounded the Queen Mary at Long Beach. And then, sort of the silly end of the story, long after the megastructure, to my way of thinking, dead, there was a student project in the in the Industrial Design School in France for a cruise ship. That's what put the whole thing in my mind. In which the ship was seen as something which didn't move very far. It was not, the point of the cruise ship isn't going anywhere, nor very fast, and it sort of exploded almost sort of archigram style in sort of various connected pontoons and balconies and cantilevers, and a totally impractical ship. A rather nice holiday hotel, in which you can see actual megastructure ideas reflected back on ships after 10 years of this sort of running comparison between the two. Well, unless there's any other burning points, as we said in final history, I'd like to leave it there for tonight because I mustn't wait until too long. Next week, if we can set it up technically, a little movie for a change about Montreal Expo. I discovered that really the best material I have is on film, and above all, the film gives a very good idea of the generally sort of jovial quality in which actual megastructures were first presented to the North American public. Right. Thank you very much.